In this tutorial, we're going to finish up making our navigation bars functional. That is, we're going to be able to navigate back and forth and click between them. And to do that, we're partly going to be using something called a code block. So at the moment, we're really just dumping everything into one page, and we're copying and pasting a lot of information back and forth across those pages. Using a code block will mean that we can get around that. So the first thing that we're going to do is here within our home page, we're going to make sure that we are able to navigate to a third route here. And to do that, we're going to create a fresh route. So we're going to go right click, new HTML page. This one's going to be called images to go to our image gallery. And as before, I'm going to select everything here and backspace it. And I'm going to copy everything out of our home.html and paste it here into images. And again, this is something we're going to try to avoid in the future, but for now, it's most of what we want. So the first thing I'm going to do is come back here to home. No, we're not, sorry. We're going to go to Flask and we're going to build a route to this. So as before, I can do a route to images, and I'm going to call this route images, and I want to return render template images.html, and that should be as simple as it is. So just by adding a backslash here with images, it will go to that particular route and route us to images.html. Here under home, we want to now be able to add a URL for that. So I'm going to come here to href, and I want to add, as before, URL for route images with my double squiggle brackets. And what this should now mean is that, as with my route locations, my clickable item up here, image gallery, will take me to images. To make sure that I know that I'm getting there, here under images, so this is my images.html, I'm going to edit this so that so that I can differentiate it. Where I've got this div row class here with my cards, I'm going to come and delete that entirely, so I just have a jumbotron here. Within the jumbotron, I'm going to get rid of my home page. I'm going to call this image gallery, and I'm going to say here under my lead, here are a few images that from a trip, and then I'm going to save that. So all that I should have now on my images.html is just this jumbotron. So what does this look like? Let's go and find out. Stop and rerun, come to here. I can now click on location. If I go back, I can now click on image gallery and I go to here. Now there is of course a problem, and that is that once I'm on images, these won't necessarily work. All right? So once I go to image gallery, this isn't going to function. All right? Once I get to locations, these nav bars don't necessarily have anything coded into them. And that's for a very simple reason. If I were to skip back to locations and have a look at what is the nav bar up in here, you'll see that I don't have my href, right? Because I only edited that on my home.html. It would be a proper pain in the neck for us to constantly need to, every time we create a new page, to go about needing to hard code in each instance these href. Moreover, let's say later on I wanted to change this from root images to root image gallery, I'd need to then go and hard code it across all of my HTML pages. This is obviously untenable. We get around this by using code blocks. And the simplest way to think of a code block is that what we're going to do is we're going to create a page that is almost blank. It's got just a handful of things that are common across all of your pages on it. So at the moment it's just going to be, there's going to be a nav bar along the top. I could make it a whole stack of other things. I could have a standard masthead along the top here, etc., etc. But I'm just going to have this base template that's just going to include the raw, simple content that I need across all of my pages. And then each time I go about loading a home page, etc., then it's just going to pull whatever content is from that base page, the base template, and use it and just fill in the gaps. So the way that I do that is I come here to templates and I go right click, new HTML file. But in this instance, I'm going to call it base, just base. So base.html is going to be this raw template that includes everything except for the content that's specific to an individual page. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's come here to the home, since this is otherwise kind of in our template each and other instance. I'm going to, again, go Control-A, Control-C, come here to base, wipe all of my content there, and paste it in here. So keep in the back of your head this idea of the only thing that we want in this base.html is the content that is common across all the pages. And at the moment, we don't want any of this because these are our cards. We don't want the jumbotron because that's going to be different on different pages. All that we really want is just this nav bar. So if I were to now go and open up base.html, it would just have a nav bar and it would have nothing else underneath it. It would be otherwise a blank page. What I do want it to do though is underneath that I want to have a block here to say other pages. So a page such as home is going to drop a code block in here. Let's have a look at what this looks like, because it's a confusing notion until you've seen it in action. I'm going to create something called a code block. And the way that I do that is I use a squiggle bracket with a percentage sign, and then I type this command block, and then I type the name of the block here. So in our instance, we're going to call it content. I then need to close this block, so I'm going to say end block content. And this is now effectively a placeholder. So now when I go to home, I'm going to put things inside something called a code block for content, and it's going to extend this base.html. It's going to dump everything in here. So let's again have a look at what this means. Home now will only ever need the content that is specific to it. All right? Everything else is going to be here under base. So what I need to do to say that, hey, this is going to be an extension of base is right at the very top here. Well, I want to say that it extends another page. So I'm going to, again, use my open squiggle and my percentage sign. I'm going to say that this extends base.html. And I do need it to be in that single inverted commas here. So I'm saying that this extends base.html. And I'm going to have in here a code block called content. And then later on, I'm going to say end block content. So what this is saying, just these 3 lines here, is that it's extending base.html. It's going to use this base.html for most of its content, but there's going to be a block in here called content. Everything inside these 2 lines is going to then appear in here. So here under home, let's think about all the things that we just want specific to home. Well, I don't need any of this stuff here in the head. I don't really need anything here in the body. I don't need, I do need some things in the body, but I certainly don't need the navbar, so I can get rid of all of that navbar. I really just want this jumbotron. I might keep the rows here, and then I won't need any of this stuff here underneath it as well, because that's going to be on my base.html. So now, if I take all of this content here from my jumbotron and all of my rows, I'm going to select that, I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to paste it here, except that I managed to miss one chevron there. I'm going to make sure that I have added it up in here. So now everything within this content is going to appear on this base.html page. So again, let's have a look at what this looks like so that we can see it in action. Right, so now it looks like very little has actually changed, but what it's doing is it's now added this navbar from base.html. So how does this help us? Well, what it means is that we can now do exactly the same thing with our locations. So with our locations, we actually don't really need very much in here at all except for the jumbotron. So I'm going to get rid of everything except for the jumbotron. Absolutely everything except for the jumbotron, and then I'm going to use the same formula as what I had before. That is, I'm going to put in here extends base.html, and then I'm going to wrap this jumbotron inside our code block. So this is going to be block content, and I'm going to close end block content up in here. So why is this going to be beneficial? Well, our base.html has these various hrefs here, right? These root location and root images. In fact, one thing that it is currently lacking is our href here for our home. So we might even do the href here to homepage. So here under base, we can go about getting rid of this. So I'm going to say URL for homepage. So now our base includes all 3 of these. So now when I go to my location page, which is now also using this, this code block here, you'll see that now I can go to locations and it adds this content here. Even though locations just has only 12 lines of code here, just remember that what it's actually doing is it's extending the base.html. Let's repeat this here with images. Right? So same as before, what do I really need? Well, my base.html is handling all of this stuff up here. Really all that I want is my jumbotron, and I can get rid of everything underneath it. I'm then going to come up to here and say open squiggle bracket extends base.html, close, and then I'm I'm going to go to block content as before, put my end block content underneath it and hit save. And now I'm going to run this again and just make sure that my image gallery now works as well. I now have locations and image gallery. Now again, why is this going to be beneficial at all? Well, again, anytime that I now want to make a change to my navbar here, let's say I wanted an extra list item. Previously, I would have needed to have gone onto every single individual page and edited each one of the nav items. Now, all that I need to do is edit my base.html. So as before, I can come here and I can see this list item. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to copy and paste it underneath. I'm going to create a fresh list item, and this one's going to go to news. And I'm going to get rid of my href here, and I'm just going to revert it back to my hashtag. Well, now when I hit start, stop and rerun, and return to this, news appears on the side here, no matter which page I go to. So I've created that base.html tab, and it now goes across all of the pages that are now being extended. So code blocks are super useful for that exact reason.